from a real estate market side, I'm going to put some pieces together here. And then we're going to get some help putting the missing links together and seeing what can we do. Because the other thing that we have, if you're already investing, you've got equity. You've got equity in your existing assets. You've been, if you've had them for a while and you haven't already used it, you've got equity. What you don't have right now is bidding wars. You're not being forced to pay and outbid everybody who wants property because there are no properties. The laws of supply and demand have been huge in this marketplace, and we've had no supply. We literally ran out of houses in, I think, June 2021. My job is to help people buy investment properties, and they called me and they're like, I'm from California, I want to buy a house. I'm like, I'm so sorry, we're out of houses right now, but can I call you back in 3 months? There's got to be some by then. So our buying power and our return on investment is decreasing. When I show you some of the prices of the properties available, those are decreasing. Inventory and days on market is increasing. That's going to mean what? If you've got higher days on market, what's that going to mean?
You get to look around.
You get to look around. You don't have to buy a property and you only have one available to look for. You want a house? Great. Well, here's the one that meets your criteria. Would you like it? It'll be gone tomorrow. Let me know right now. Yeah. But also sellers are going to get motivated. They're going to want to sell. They're just going to get, we're going to finally have some negotiating power. And buyers are starting to utilize that negotiating power. Agents are starting to say things like, yeah, I'll present any offer you give me. That's our job. You can't not present an offer. So they're basically saying, like, just write an offer, you know, just give me something. Off-market deals are being considered. As I mentioned, that 11th Street triplex, they went ahead and they knew that buyer valued taking it off market. We've all been there. We've felt like if it hits market, it's already been picked over. You know, if a buyer can pick it up off market, there's a value to that. And a seller a year ago might not have been so inclined to take that. They would know the open market might really drive that price up. And in this case, a buyer's a buyer. You know, we're finally valued as buyers again. So contingent offers for people who actually need to sell a house in order to buy, they can actually move. They're allowed to move again. You don't have to, you know, they were getting thrown out. But the big question is what lies ahead. So here's what I see when I log into the MLS. My agent view, if I run a search for single family homes in Meridian that were built since 2000, a snapshot of what come up. Well, first of all, there was a huge list. I wasn't used to seeing that for a while. But second of all, in this screenshot, in this snapshot, all these little red down arrows, that indicates that the price has been decreased on that listing. So in this particular snapshot, it's, you know, it's just a random sample size of a bigger sample, but, you know, we're looking at like maybe half of these have had a price decrease. So something's going on out there, and that's going to be an increase in buying power, an increase in negotiating power, lower prices you would have paid if you were in the market for this house and you wanted it and you had an ability to buy it and it was time for you to buy. You would have paid a lot more for it a few months ago. So now you can get it for a lot less, but your interest rate's higher, so your payment will be higher. But there were a lot of people who really wish they bought a buys. Well, you couldn't because a lot of people couldn't, but then those who could, everybody was running away from real estate and scared of it. And then everybody wished they bought then, you know, so I don't know what are we going to, what's our future self? How's our future self going to advise our past self of right now? Are we going to, you know, I look forward to hearing what you think. This is a look at the average sales price graph. Purple line is the top blue line is Ada, the purple line on the bottom is Canyon, and the blended average is the gray line in between. And so it's literally just a picture of average sales prices, September 20 to September 22. So Ada County, the median price of homes I remember presenting what feels like not very long ago and being shocked when the median price of homes hit $500,000. Afford this. How could they afford it? The rates were great. So there's going to be some downward pressure on prices because the rates aren't great. So there won't be as many people able to afford it, but also the increase in interest rates is kind of designed to do that. It's designed to slow things down. Now, interestingly, year over year, we're still up. And we've had 4 consecutive months of month over month median price decreases. But we only have had, if you run the numbers looking only at existing homes, can you find a year over year decrease? But when you're looking at the overall market, which would be new construction and existing, there hasn't been a decrease. So new construction prices are still higher. But look at some of those stats. Days on market up 100% from last year.
Which isn't a bad thing.
It was going too fast. Yeah. Inventory up 100 or 94% from last year. And again, it was making a frenetic market to have no houses, no days on market. People were making huge buying decisions with very little time to do so. And then the number of actual sales is down, pushing a third or so. Now, when we add Canyon County into the mix over here, that median is around 427,000. So that's our median price of homes in Canyon. Days on market up more than 100%. Inventory not up quite as much, but still up 2/3. And the number of homes again down more than a third. Let's see what this next slide is. Okay, so here's what the sales price has been doing and the percent change. The blue line here is the actual percent change in median prices, and the gray bars are the median prices. And this is September 2022, and we started looking at this in January 2019. So you can see that the median prices were creeping up, creeping up, creeping up, and only just fell in the past 4 months. But what's really drastically fallen off is the difference, the change, the percent of change year over year. That growth has calmed. And a lot of us said it was unsustainable. How long can you have double-digit appreciation? And so that's where we're finally finding the end of double appreciation. So after peaking at 44% in May of 2021, that was our peak, annual price growth has trended down and slowed significantly. Low mortgage rates drive demand for housing by increasing buying power. And the opposite is also true. And so the average 30-year fixed mortgage was 6.7% at the end of September this year, compared to 3% September last year. So the interest is the story. So the efforts to reduce the inflation are definitely having major impacts on the housing market. And this is pushing down on sales, pushing down on demand, and it's giving inventory a little bit of time to accumulate with that change in demand and that buying power. But buyers aren't facing fierce competition. And if rates drop in the future, this is I'm kind of summarizing some Boise Regional Realtor stuff here. And if rates drop in the may opt to refi and save on their monthly payments. And additionally, they have the negotiating power. So if we're talking about negotiation, let's look at sales price versus list price. This is in the residential income category, and I only ran one because when I ran it in residential, the lines look the same, very similar. So you can see that in fall of last year, we finally got a seasonal cool down last year. So when we finally got our seasonal cool down a little bit last year, prices were maybe hitting around 98% or so of asking. And then when we got to April and spring, you can see prices were pretty much at asking. They were right there. And then now we have a little bit of a dip. And I think we're technically in residential, we're at 92.5% of list price is where the deals are being made. So a little bit less. So for buyers, I encourage you, if there's a property you like, we can still look at it. Let's look at days on market. We don't have to come in at full price. You know, we watch above our price point to see what's going on when we're watching the market. We've always bracketed, but 6 months ago, a year and 6 months ago, we couldn't count on something coming down. It was just nice to know what you couldn't afford. Now, maybe you can make a play for something that's higher if that's the one you like. Here is building permits. What's going on in the future? What's being built? How are these laws of supply and demand and inventory supply, how's this going to affect what we actually have available in our valley? Here's the building permits. 58% decline since August, 73% decline since last year in the residential category, according to Pioneer Title. However, I called Hubble because we've done a ton of new builds with them, and they said they've got 400 homes in process and 260 are spec. So they don't have buyers for those 260. They're just building them and throwing them out there on the market. They're going to stop building spec homes for a minute until they catch back up and get those sold. They were starting 4 homes a day. They're going to chill out. They're going to start 1 home a day. And they plan on boosting this back up to 4 a day in January. CBH is also working through the existing permits, according to the Ames County, Dan Curtis, one of the appraisers. He's like, yeah, they're chilling out, but they're not really hunkering down for a long haul. They're taking a pause. I don't know. Apartments are still underutilized, according to Ron in the commercial side of things. And so what they're saying is other cities of our size can handle a lot more apartments, and they have a lot more apartments. And so we specifically had an AVID investor ask 2 months ago, what's going on with all those apartments we're building and how is that going to affect vacancy? And so far, it seems the general consensus is we're underutilized. Our market can handle more apartments. The apartment building permits haven't really been affected or changed. They're still doing it. No slowdowns. So the interest is a huge part of the story, but that's why we have this topic tonight. Here's what's going on in duplexes and fourplexes. Ada and Canyon County are multifamily properties. The inventory has jumped up. Pending deals are up. Sales are steady. But if pending's up, sales will be up next month. And absorption is now under 1 month for fourplexes and over 1 month in duplexes. So these numbers are still sellers market numbers here. Yeah.
What do you mean by absorption levels?
If we took, I always have a hard time explaining it, but if you, at the rate that houses are currently selling, how long would it take to sell everything that we currently have on the market? A 3 to 6 month is a balanced timeline on that. And that's like the right answer, the balanced market. Anything under 3 is a seller's market. It would only take us a month to burn through all the inventory we currently have.
Got it. Okay.
A 3-month answer would be better. So these multifamilies are actually, and so there was one multifamily, a client called me about it on Saturday, or emailed me about it on Saturday. And I was like, oh, well, I'll check it out on Monday because everything slowed down. I thought I could breathe. No, that one went pending. So the investors are still moving, not quite as quickly on all of them, but if you underprice something, they're going to jump on it. So the gross rent multiplier, this Tony Rusk graph is, he mentioned that it's skewed. We need to be careful with it because there were only 2 fourplex sales in September. So how do you do a big graph off of that? Well, we can just look at the overall trend line. That 6-month average trailing is the red line, but the gross rent multiplier has been pushing lower, which is better for investors, worse for sellers, better for buyers. Although this last month we had a couple sales that really threw the cap rates up there. This last month. So our cap rate, 6-month trailing, went higher. It got pulled up by this sort of data anomaly we had this month, but it has, as you see here, we were at that 4% mark for quite a while. For quite a while, our 6-month trailing cap rate was 4, and that has gone up. And here's what it actually looks like. This is what's active in fourplexes right now in Ada and Camden County. Spiceland is newer, a newer property, ski jump, brand new. Lots of stairs, brand new property, looks cool, lots of them around there. And then on the other end of the spectrum, Sugar is like a house with some converted units in it in Nampa. Nothing super compelling. And only one down arrow. And only one down arrow on these 5+, which is a harder category to fill in this market. We definitely don't get as many of those 5+, which is why I was kind of excited about the Colorado Avenue property and why I printed that pro forma out for you, because I like it that it's taking and kind of looking forward on cap rates and not trying to squeeze you down to a 4 cap, even though 16 units are rare. As opposed to the Boise version on Overland, which is 15 units, but not built. So yeah, that's what our market's doing. Any questions on that? Okay, well, let's figure out together how we're going to kind of strategize and how we're going to make some things work with the numbers, how we've got equity and leverage, how we're going to use it with leverage. And Dave, I'd love to invite you up here. We have Dave Rusk from Idaho Central Credit Union. He is getting the job done out there, and let us know what we need to know, Dave.
Wish I had some better news on rates, but let's get into it, huh? Yeah, thanks for having me, Stacy. It's great. I thought a couple things I would go over. I obviously see rates and transactions every day, so it's all common knowledge to me. I don't know how versed on where investment rates are at right now, and then we'll talk about what people are doing to access equity and be ready for when it's time to purchase. They're not necessarily ready right now from the consensus that I gather, but tons of home equity inquiries every day. But on the investment side, everything, when I say everything, 30-year fixed, we've got 5, 7, 10-year arm on investment. Everything's hovering in that mid sevens, low sevens at best on a shorter term arm. And you're not seeing a lot of fluctuation rates, but you are seeing a large fluctuation in the cost. So Fannie Mae will put ceilings on these rates, like, hey, we're not going to increase the 30-year fixed over 7.625 or whatever it might be. But the cost to get that rate is changing every day. So a lot of fluctuation there. In comparison, on a primary residence, you're seeing rates fluctuate pretty much every day as well. Right now, we're right around 7% for just your standard 30-year fixed primary residence. So not a huge gap, but there's a bigger gap in the cost. So all of this is new. So it's, I just find it really interesting. It's just a constant case study, and being able to hear and see what people are doing and feeling, and, you know, and trying to sell homes and but on the positive side for the buyers, I mean, it pretty much just changed overnight a couple months ago, where all of a sudden now we're seeing seller concessions, which is nice. See that pretty much on every deal now, meaning that the sellers are providing a credit. Sometimes it's a credit combined with a deep discount on price. I think we're pretty early in this, and it feels like the market is just trying to figure out, you know, where are prices going to be? Where are they going? What are rates going to do? Because we went right straight through 5%, right through 6%, right through 7%. Now we're pushing 8% on investment properties. So, you know, when you run your performance, that obviously impacts the numbers. So that was, I find interesting. So, you know, higher down payments, you know, we weren't having to do 50% down 6 months ago to make the numbers work. Now we are. And maybe that leads into, if you are looking to purchase right now, where are we coming up with the capital to do so? Again, I probably get at least 2 or 3 inquiries a day on home equity loans. So people are accessing equity in their homes right now, which is obviously a great time to do it because prices are trending down and values are trending down. In our case, we use a pretty simple formula, which they're all done at our branches, but they're going to look at tax assessed values. And tax assessed values are fairly inflated right now on the Ada County site. Not good for property taxes, but good for accessing equity right to use it later. Maybe you don't, maybe you do. That's one of the nice things about that. No cost to open up a home equity line, completely free. And you're taking advantage of where prices are currently or where Ada County has them sitting at for values right now. So
And is that going to be a moving rate, the HELOC?
the HELOC is, yeah.
And it can go down as
That's right.
well as up?
Yep. So that's going to move right with prime rate. So as the Fed has moved rates each month, your home equity line is moving every single time, right away. Eventually, hopefully that comes down, but we're obviously on an upward trend right now. So that's being impacted. But so a lot of people are just opening up lines, say for like 300,000 and just sitting. You should just let it sit there, and the rate's going to fluctuate as it will be. What are rates on those? Most of, I think in a best tier for us is prime plus a half. So 6.25 plus a half%. So you're still sitting sub 7% in most areas or in most scenarios for
Prime 6.25.
6.25. Yeah. So yeah. So 6.25 plus a half, maybe up to 1.25, depending on what the scenario is.
Is that investment or owner occupied?
Good question. So we only do them on owner occupied and second homes. We can do them on second homes. Yeah.
Are you guys, I'm sorry, are you requiring people to make larger down payments now?
Down payments have not been impacted on, I will say, no, investments a little bit on most of the investment arms. And I will say, I don't remember the last person who's done a fixed here in at least the last month.
Yeah.
Most are landing on that 7. There's been a lot of 5s too.
So it's still like
5, 7 or 10.
Okay.
So you're 25%
25%.
for investment. Yep.
And you'll lend on it even if that's a negative cash flow, as long as the buyer can tolerate it.
Yeah, we won't even look at that.
Okay.
It's going to be more on the commercial side that would look at the individual numbers for that particular property. But yeah, if they've got cash flow to cover it, not even looked at.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't, what's the term?
Yeah.
Service coverage ratio?
Oh, that's on the commercial side. Yep. Yep.
I didn't know that.
All day long on commercial, not on our side.
What's Matt's last name again? Your commercial guy, Matt, there's a Matt at ICCU. And he definitely looks at debt service coverage ratio. More frequently and more recently, I've worked with Matt Craner a bit on the commercial side at Westmark Credit Union.
I
And
know.
he mentioned that his debt service, what they're looking at for debt service
Mhm.
coverage ratio has gotten a little bit more strict.
Okay.
They weren't overly focused on that at Westmark, and now they are. 1.25%.
And also to clarify, on the residential side, we're 4 units and below, so.
What's your max CLTV on the HELOC or your, on a primary residence?
There's gonna be some variance, most of the ones that we'll see, so values of 650 and below, so
Okay.
values of 650 and below will go up to 90. 650 to $1 million is at 80% cap. There's gonna be another tier, I wanna say it drops to 70, maybe 75, and $1 million to $1.5 million.
Will you say that
value.
again without the acronym, just for the rest of
Oh,
us?
sorry.
No, it's cool.
Combined.
The combined
Yeah,
loan
yeah.
to value, so that's gonna be your, whatever you owe on your first mortgage combined with whatever loan limit you're looking for on your line of credit.
Okay. So you can loan up to 90%.
90% if of the home
Okay,
is 650 or less. And the value is going to be determined, they're going to go down kind of a progression. So they'll look at tax assessed value, use that first. Some people are looking for more value than Ada County has it assessed for. So you can always pay for an appraisal if you want to do that as a consumer. We also have an automated value system that will run prior to somebody paying for an appraisal. So the last step would be paying for an appraisal in that case. But yeah, million to 650, 80% combined loan to value. But it's been interesting because we have inquiries, off and on over the last few years, every now and then, but those have definitely gone up for multiple different reasons for people contacting me about those, but they, especially in the last 2 months, which there's really no downside as long as somebody's responsible and knows, they're not going to just go blow it somewhere, which they definitely can, and I've seen done. But it's a great resource to have sitting there, and it will fluctuate as if rates end up coming down at some point, then your HELOC will come down to match the market.
yeah, that's a really good point. I think a lot of the folks in this room know that, but maybe for those watching online or the video after, HELOC funds are treated the same as cash in a purchase contract.
That's
so, if you're using 100% of the HELOC, you can be writing an all cash offer as long as that loan's all ready to go.
That's right. Yeah, and we see it. So we see it quite often. Some people are using a combination of cash and HELOC. Some people are just using a HELOC right up front and then they move money after. So it's a really convenient tool for multiple reasons. Doesn't have to be for real estate purchase, use it for whatever you want, but that's typically why people are opening them up right now.
Another question?
Yeah. that's
Okay,
great.
you mentioned investors are going with ARMs a lot. Are you
Yeah.
seeing non-investors also doing a lot more ARMs,
Yeah.
or are they gravitating?
No, really personal preference, but the difference in so on a primary residence, you're seeing about at least a 0.5% difference between, say, a 10-year ARM and a 30-year fixed. And so that 10-year has kind of been a sweet spot for people, the 30-year fixed crowd. Who didn't want to venture into the adjustable side of things. They're kind of just making a bet that there's probably going to be something happening. Either I'm going to sell the home. There's going to be 10 years. That's a bet you can make, but 10 years is a good period of time that hopefully something will happen and create a window to refinance in that time if you still have the home. So, but yeah, 0.5% difference makes it definitely compelling. And then 7 years more on the 0.75 of a point difference, and then the 5 years closer to a full percent difference. So, on 500,000, it's going to make a big difference in payment. I've seen personally a lot of debt ratio Like we can go up to say 45, 50% in most cases. As far as debt ratios go, a lot more deals coming through that are pushing that higher boundary. You guys, I don't know if you're maybe seeing the same thing. I've seen that stuck out to me recently, that that's become more of a challenge than it has in the past. Hence the 3% to 7% jump. It makes a difference.
Big time.
Yeah. But it, it's interesting. I think it, with the, I've had some people, pre-qualified at 7%, and then rates go to 6 and 7, but they can still kind of hang around. But in, prices are falling to a certain area that they're back in. It's like, oh, I didn't love this particular house at 900 at 7%, but if I can get it for 750 or 800 now, I might be able to stomach it. So
Especially when you.
Can you qualify the, how much the percentage of loans that went to an ARM versus a fixed, how that changed in the last year or so, or 6 months?
I wouldn't know the numbers. I wouldn't know the number. I would say more so, at least just speaking for me, in the last 3 months, the percentage is completely flipped. I mean, prior, you're probably 90% 30-year fixed, 10% ARM. I would guess we're probably 70% ARM, 30% fixed right now. I bet it's close. Yeah. And we used to just have a 5-year available, and that's we now have 7 and 10 available. So I know that is accounting for some of that, but most are falling. I bet that 70-30 is probably pretty close, but it's changing all the time. So I find it very fascinating to see how the market's working, not only in our market, but nationwide. And who knows what future brings, but with inflation numbers, and they're going to keep hammering that until that's in order. And I think that it's tough to speculate and know what's going to happen in the future, but I think we're probably in a higher rate market for a decent amount of time, at least through I would say the end of next year. I would say. Who knows though? Hopefully that's wrong, but Fed's going to keep firing shots.
We'll make a betting pool when we think they'll come back down, and maybe we'll do that at the end and take a picture of it and check back on it and see who wins.
What do you think? I think that's interesting because it feels like there's a difference between, or rates have shot up very quickly, and in my mind, I think it would take a while for rates to follow suit, or prices to follow suit and match, not necessarily even out, but it feels like they've got to fall further to equal out where rates have gone.
Mm-hmm. I think that there will be some good deals coming up soon. Mm-hmm. Historically speaking, last December was so slow. I mean, we had our first December shutdown that we'd had in a while. So I think that December would be a decent time to buy, but I would never promise anyone it won't go lower before it goes higher. Yeah. What I'm really curious about is I hear all this optimism for spring. So I want to know, gosh, are we really, what's spring going to be? Is it going down, or will we have things warm back up for spring and then go down again seasonally? Right. So historically speaking, we'd have some seasonal ebbs and flows, and I would imagine that that's not going to be as strong. Yeah. And that we'll get a little bit of a warm up in spring. Yeah. And then next fall, people could really settle into it, I guess, but I don't know. Yeah. So I'm thinking seasonal, I'm thinking buy in the off season if there's anything to buy. And I also think that this investor market, with investors being unafraid to refi, and excited by lower prices, you know, and possibly they've just got more overall money, more net worth, and so
Mhm.
maybe not afraid to move things around. I'm interested in seeing if and when these investment prices, because so far it's more been that single family home market that's really taken the hit.
Right.
So I don't really have a big speculation, but I think that it'll be good deals in December. I think it'll warm up a bit in spring, but I don't know, you know, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some more year-over-year falls.
Mhm. And what
But
about rental rates? What do you think on that? I mean, I think we're not gonna see that hit immediately and be able to see all the numbers because they're continually, you know, they're just on different cycles and stretched out, but are you seeing anything on your side as far as rents?
Rents are
coming
getting
down?
pushed down, seasonally speaking, that
Mhm.
happens every year. They pushed up way too fast this spring
Mhm.
and had just gotten way too heated. And so there was a little bit of pushback on those. If everybody who can't sell their house puts it on the rental market just to buy themselves time, that could create some inventory and some downward pressure on rents.
Mhm.
But my number one thought on the rental market would be, you know, price it right. And if you miss the mark, don't let it sit there forever, but try to get your vacancies in spring and summer.
Yeah.
And I think that we've still got a strong rental market here. I
Right.
think that we will continue to have a strong rental market.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if the rental market and the housing market worked opposite of each other.
Mm.
And if the housing market slows down, you know, people just stay renting longer because
Sure.
now you can't buy a house and have your rent be the same price
Sure.
as a mortgage.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions circulating or anything I can go through here?
Well, we'll do more questions at the end,
Cool.
but for now, thank you.
Okay,
Dave.
great, thank you.
Nate, introduce Nate Pugmire from Summit, and he's got a whole posse with him, but are you guys a support group or are you all speaking today?
Andy and I worked together, so we'll have Andy come up. So we do very different things, but we work together.
Great. Well, this is your window. They can see yourself there. And Nate and Andy from Summit, teach us
Hello.
some stuff. Let us know how we can take advantage of these prices and we'll figure out when to do it.
Well, it's obviously, I think he hit great on the points of the market. We all had a crystal ball, right? We'd be in Vegas instead of here tonight, so who knows exactly what's going to happen. I do think that there is a lot of data that shows, historically speaking, rate trends tend to be anywhere from 6 to 24 months. All right, so we're probably 6 months into the crazy rate increases right now. Not too often do we have a January that's busier than August, right? So that's certainly uncharted territories for us. But I think that equity pieces, you know, the HELOCs, we're seeing a ton of demand for HELOCs as well. I think pretty much the same things what they do. We do have a fixed option for at least an introductory rate of 4.5% for the first 6 months, which is pretty cool. We can't do investment there. You do have some restrictions on LTVs and or CLTVs when you're talking about investment properties, but 80-90% is the pretty standard stuff. So no new information there. As far as supply and demand, you know, there was some interesting things going on with supply and demand. We still had a big supply issue when rates changed. Everybody agree with that?
Mhm.
Okay, so that hasn't been solved. And then in my opinion, it's been exacerbated because now builders have actually slowed down. So the demand is still there. In fact, I just got back from California and I probably had 11 or 12 comments of people that said, man, I would love to move to Idaho. If the rates weren't so high, I'd move, right? So I think there's already a supply issue. We're gonna see a pent up demand issue. And when rates adjust, it's gonna be a little bit scary. Because I think it's gonna be a huge amount of demand that can really cause some price. But we can see it coming. We look at our lead data for the last 12 months of people that are wanting to come and literally just cannot afford. I met with a client today, he made $80,000, can't afford to buy the house that he wants. He doesn't really have any debt. That's historically speaking a great borrower, right? So when you have that kind of demand being pent up, there will be repercussions when rates change. It's going to be really, really crazy. So the point of that is there are going to be opportunities, right? And there is going to be a great I think there's gonna be a great opportunity for growth. It's just, when is that time frame gonna happen? And that's the $1 million question is, am I gonna time it right? What's the saying is, best to be timed in than time the market, right? So that's the challenge, is timing the market perfectly is really hard. The longer you're in the market, the better chance you have of winning. That's probably what I would encourage people to do is, hey, take it, if you see an opportunity, take advantage of it. We know long haul wise, real estate does really well, right? And so I think that's the play is, hey, unless you're buying a steal, you need to be planning for a long-term plan, right? Now, that being said, we also have a lot.
I
Yeah, go
was
ahead.
gonna say, the biggest shift we're seeing is we're still active doing consumer residential loans, but we're seeing a lot more opportunity with investors, developers, builders. We do a lot of the DSCR loans where we're leveraging, the asset. They can fund it in their LLC and they can leverage the lease against the future debt service payment, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's less doc intensive than a conventional Fannie Freddie loan asset base. This is going to be more, asset and lease income based. We're yeah. Obviously, you're still looking at the profile of the borrower, their balance sheet, their track record, and so forth, but it's going to be less doc intensive. So we're seeing more opportunity with investors, with builders, developers. I feel like
That
a
activity is-
high
yeah.
percentage of our transactions are, like secondary market, and it's more investor based, where people are trying to, utilize equity, take that equity, throw it into opportunities. Obviously, you need equity to facilitate debt, the debt piece, but we're doing a lot of like bridge fund duration loans, your 12 to 24 month loans. We have options, owner occupied and the non-owner, where a lot of times investors or developers come in, they acquire and renovate. And so typically I'm seeing more where investors like, hey, they want to hold on to the asset. So they stabilize it, then they want to get into the marriage money, which is going to be the permanent debt. We come through, we throw a rate term or a cash out on them, long term, whether that's the 5, 7, typically, we're doing 30.
And we can do DSCR down to 75.
Yeah.
You can also do it a non-recourse. So if you want to do it in LLC, you can close it in LLC. And then we have portfolio options as well. So if you've got 5 properties, 8 properties, 20 properties, whatever, and you're like, hey, I want to have one loan, I want to recapitalize, we can put together one loan. You're going to get better capital rates than you're going to on a regular investment property. And have as non-recourse, it's going to be in an LLC, it's no longer going to show up on your personal credit. So,
and you can end that out 30 years, which is crazy.
Right.
Most institutions are going to do like a 20-25 year AM, and they're going to recourse it out.
right.
You can stretch it out 30 years, so you can, increase your cash flow, lower your debt service on it, and it's going to be a non-recourse type of product. So.
And so when you're saying the DSCR loan, you're talking about a debt service coverage
Exactly.
ratio. And so you're looking at the performance of the property and loaning a certain value based on the rents, the NOI, the rents minus the
Right,
expenses.
so just keep like real simple. Let's say your gross rent is $2,000 a month, and your debt service, which is your PITI, is $2,000 a month. That's a 1-to-1 ratio. If you've got like 1,800 gross rents, you divide that against your debt service, you're going to be under 1. So like Nate was saying, we actually we can go down to 0.75.
Right. Which,
Okay.
You're it's gonna change the parameters of the deal. You're gonna pay a higher interest rate, and your leverage is
so
probably gonna
here
go
would be an
down.
example for that. The property we were looking at before with the R3D zoning,
Yeah.
right? I'm looking at that saying, okay, is there,
1905 Bannock.
is there an opportunity to do, add another unit or two units onto this? Or even though it's not gonna cash flow at these numbers the way that it is right now, if I can add 2 more units, I can pick it up as a DSCR. It's not gonna, and then I can go renovate it, add the units that I want to do, and now it's a really solid project, right? So That's the way I look at DSCRs. How can I solve a short-term problem to create a long-term opportunity? So there's a ton of different ways. Creative financing is going to be a huge, so interesting. Last year, 33% of all transactions done in the US were done with non-QM financing.
Crazy.
Non-QM, so in other words, non-conventional financing, right? So whether that's private money, seller financing, there's a ton of different ways you could do it, but 33%, so it's a huge amount of the volume is being done with creative financing, right? So it's not just the A paper, it's not just the DSCRs, there's a whole bunch of other ways you can skin a cat, and we can help you do those things. So we're really good at solving the difficult situations. The employed borrower or the self-employed borrower that takes advantage of all the deductions, like we all know that game, right? We have loans that can help them qualify even though their tax returns don't show they have enough income, right? So we have ways to do those things as well.
I was wondering, could you, since I'm not familiar with your company or whatever.
Yeah.
Could you describe what your company is and what you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Summit Funding, I started Summit Funding 3.5 years ago. I've been in the Valley as a lender for 19 years. So I've been around for a long time. We are a mortgage banker, but we also can go out and get private money and brokers and do all kinds of creative stuff. So we typically, we can do a lot of the things the bank does, right? But we fill the niche of all the things that are not inside the box, right? So we can do creative. Now, I'm not the guy who wants to go out and do those neg am loans. I never did those. That's not what we do. We look for ways to solve problems, but we always want to make sure we're putting the borrowers in good situations, right? So I'm not interested in doing loans just to do loans. It has to be, hey, am I solving a problem that helps you get where you're trying to go, not just close a loan that helps me, right? So we've got a really good team. Andy's really good at the commercial. So whether it's 200 units or it's a assisted living, or we do stuff all over. We're doing commercial projects in Dallas. We do stuff all over the place. So it's not just here. So we've got a pretty wide range of the capital stack that we'll approach, whether that's mezz money, private money, CMBS funds. So we'll do a pretty wide range of what we can attack. And we work together. So he'll find money and then I'll help structure. So whether it's SBA, we've done a lot. We're kind of a Swiss Army knife, so to speak. But we have people that are good at each thing, not one person that does it all, if that makes sense. Okay.
And you do the commercial side of things.
Yeah, I do. I have my residential license, so I do a decent amount of resi, but my background is commercial residential. I worked for a group out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida for about 4 years, and we originated and acquired essentially bridge loans. So that was your fix and flip loans, that was your Airbnb rental loans, spec loans. So essentially, you give them a bridge, and their exit is, back in the day, primarily the exit was, okay, I'm going to fix this up and I'm going to sell it, or they're going to come back and say, hey, I want to get a permanent loan or the marriage money. So I did that for 4 years, and then I jumped on the Summit. It's already been 2 years, man.
Yeah. So you can tell this commercial because all his acronyms are like marriage money and like there's different things, right? So he comes from a different world, but it's really fun. We have a good time working together.
Yeah, man, we have fun.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
just need a translator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing we're seeing
I
a
can
lot
break
of,
it down for you.
another thing we're seeing a lot right now is BTR, which is build to rent.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
we just the Caldwell one's 100
units.
so they're looking at building vertical 128 homes that they plan on keeping and renting. Right. So when you're talking about long-term money, the Wall Street money or insurance money is saying, hey, look, we're okay with small returns. We know long-term it's going to be good. We don't want to have our money in the market because it's too risky. Right. So we know long-term the rentals will be a safe play. So there is a lot of that money that's happening. 100 units is a pretty significant amount of money. Right. There are going to be 3 twos. Yes.
So you do non-recourse on that type of thing?
We
Or
do.
you non-recourse on the residential, not just the commercial side?
Residential, we can do residential as long as it's pulled together.
Pull it in,
Right.
LLC or something.
Yep. And you can actually go non-recourse on a single family rental. You can just pay a little bit of a premium price to do it. But if you don't want to have it in your name, you can certainly do that. Most of the stuff we do on that is usually buckets or pools of properties, or, you know, it's a commercial property, because as long as there's more than 5 doors, we can do commercial. Right? So it's a really effective tool.
5 doors, typically, you
$1
want to be,
million.
you want to be a million and up on the loan size.
Right.
To really stretch it into that 30.
Yeah, you know, and we know the feds are idiots, but they're super slow. They're way behind the gun. They should have reacted a long time ago, and now they've created this environment that's ridiculous, right? They're gonna make another jump. Here, the misnomer is the feds do not dictate rates. It's inflation is what rates follow, right? The problem is we just had another inflation increase because the October number was not what they expected it to be. Surprise, surprise, right? And so the way that inflation works, and so when you talk about what's going to happen in spring, I look at more what inflation numbers are we going to be looking at. So the way that inflation works is you do a 12-month look back. Okay, and each month has its own number. So whether it's 0.7, 0.5, whatever that number is, right? So the problem is that we've got high inflation numbers through July. So 0.8, 0.9, a lot of those months are really big. Unless you're replacing that number with a small number, we're not going to see inflation numbers go down potentially until July. So that means we're high inflation, high rates potentially all through the summer months. And Fannie Mae, you can Google this. Fannie Mae came out and predicted a 4.5% rate by the end of the year of 2023. So it's Google it, you can see it. Anybody can pull it up. Is that accurate? I don't know. I would think that Fannie Mae has some pretty smart people working there, but you would also think that the Fed has smart people working there as well. So you can choose and pick which one of those are right, but those seem to contradict each other quite a bit, right? If inflation is going to be high through July, how are we going to have a rate of 4.5? Now, that being said, quantitative easing, if the Feds come in and start buying loans again, that would force rates to go down. I can't see going into an election year in 2024, them not doing something, because it will be really, really ugly for the Democrats if they don't. Right, so that would be my guess for what are rates going to do. I don't know that we're going to see it in spring, but I think from a political standpoint, there's going to be too much pressure to not have something happen in 2024. The question is how much are we going to get hit in 2023? I think it's going to be a pretty long winter, right? Because we just don't, from an average consumer, right? Which means there's going to be a lot of opportunity for, if you're prepared, you have cash, you have equity, access to your equity, there's going to be some great deals to be had. I do think a lot of the consumers that have great rates are just going to hunker down because they're like, hey, I don't need to sell my house, I'm going to stay where I'm at. Builders, I think, are probably the most exposed because they don't want the carrying costs. So there might be some discounts. The quandary therein is if you have 100 lots and you discount your property $100,000, right? You just lost $10 million. Right, so that's the challenge that they're in, is if they start getting into that game of discounting too much, they really shoot themselves in the foot. So it could be that they stop building to just prevent that from happening. We don't know what's going to happen there. I do want to say there's one. I'm actually pretty positive about opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. But I did think Berkshire Hathaway at their last shareholders meeting had a really interesting comment, and they said the amount of cash they have in hand is like 4 times what it normally is. And his comment was, we are heavy on cash in case the economy stops. And that is a little bit of a concerning comment for guys that are that smart, right? So keep your cash, hang on to your cash, because I do think there's going to be opportunities, but there's going to be some roller coaster, I think, for the next 6 to 9 months. Could be a little bit ugly, but I do think once we come on the other side, there's going to be some amazing market for us to be in, for those of us that survive it, right? Anything else you want to add? Any questions from you guys? Since we've just fed you the fire hose of crazy data.
That's what we like. That's how we do it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being had. I know there's some questions. Let's give them a second to marinate.
Yeah.
That's a great word, by the way.
Marinate.
I like that word.
So I think what I'm hearing is you've got a lot of contradictory feedback coming out at you that says it could go one way or it could go the other, but I think your crystal ball.
I think it's gonna be good. I think it's just gonna be hard for the next 6 months.
I'll say, just, you know, you probably noticed this as well, Dave, like, just like individual transactions. I mean, they were underwritten pretty forensically before, right? But now I'm even seeing more conditions
There's
know,
definitely more scrutiny.
on our
files
balance sheet, like, or when we wholesale out and we,
Delivered to Fannie or the
yeah,
agencies.
you know, so like even these non-QM deals, man, I've been finding a difficult non-QM file where they kind of give you that teaser rate, looks good, you know, they're a little bit cheaper than everybody else, but then you get your underwriting conditions and you're looking at them like, how the hell are we gonna get through all these conditions? That's why you have awesome team just to help you do that. But then they keep nailing you with more and more conditions. It's almost like a bait and switch. So I mean, finally get through that deal. You know that deal I'm talking about. Probably heard me swearing a few times because I'm in the office right next to him. But that's been just
But
so
these are
excessive conditions, man.
these are deals that have gone to other lenders or banks and it's just outside their scope, right? So
So with the creative financing, or non-normal, with the QM.
Yeah.
It's in that arena, do we really need to, if we're wanting, say someone's wanting to put as little cash into it as possible. Say they're in that scope, because I do have folks who are like, look, I'm buying this. If I don't put enough money down, it's gonna negative cash flow, but I want it. I believe in the neighborhood, I believe in the property. So screw the cash flow, it doesn't exist anyway. I want to put as little down as possible so I can keep my cash, take advantage of the next opportunity. Wanting to do that, put as little down as possible. But would I interpret correctly that if you're getting into that level of creative financing, maybe you can help someone put less down, but also you may get well down the path toward closing and find out actually you need to put a little more down than you thought? Do we need more of a flexible mindset going in?
Unless the appraisal comes in bad or comes in low, I mean, you know, typically that's all done up front. You know, you underwrite that with the documentation and the lease or whatever's involved. Like Nate was saying, if it's a true Fannie Freddie product, you know, your max LTVs typically be 75.
80 on a purchase.
Oh, it is 80 on, okay.
Yeah.
Well, not maybe non-QM.
Unless you're doing multifamily, then you're 75.
Mhm. So 25% down, 20% down for non-investor.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't change too much. And in the creative arena or the non-QM, okay. Well,
And
what's the lowest I might imagine putting down? I know it's gonna be based on
20,
rents, but
on investment, 20%.
still 20,
Yeah.
okay, so maybe.
I mean,
maybe a little less
any way you look at it, you know, on the capital stack, even if it's private money, which is going to be your hybrid between hard money and traditional bank money, right?
Mhm.
You know, every lender is going to want skin in the game because at the end of the day, things sometimes they go bad, right? And you know, if that borrower doesn't put any equity, they can just be like, peace, I'm out. You know,
Mhm.
they can walk away from the transaction without really paying. When you put your own skin in the game, 15, 20, 25% down, you run into a problem, you're gonna find a way to figure it out.
Mhm.
Unless things just go upside down in the market and you're upside down, you know, but.
The other thing we do is, let's say you have like the property we're talking about, what was it? With the duplex.
The Bannock Street.
Coleman, or Bannock, okay, Bannock. So we also have an investor that will JV on deals. So let's say you got a project that, hey, look, we can add 5 lots here. It's going to cost this. We have an investor that will actually JV when you bring the deal and you can participate up to 75% of the revenue. It's pretty cool. So that's not like a fix and flip. That's going to be something where you're adding lots. You're doing you're having significant increase, but you don't have the capital to do it. We've got a JV partner that will do those with the right partner.
Or you got a seller has equity in the land and they're willing to subordinate the equity, or leverage the equity to,
Do the split.
to create a transaction, a JV type of transaction.
So last thing. We also have a first position HELOC that is combined with a bank account. And the way that it works is whatever asset you have in cash, it reduces the principal, but you still have access to all the cash. So it still works as a regular mortgage and you still have a fully functional bank account, but it sweeps. So because of the sweep function, your cash literally works against your principal first. And the effective rate is the effective cause of that is that if the effective rate is reduced dramatically. So I can run simulators and I can show you that work, but it's pretty common for us to see an effective rate on interest closer to the 2.5–3% range because of the functionality of the loan. So if anybody has interest in that, I can show you how to do that.
So that's if you carry a cash balance and, X amount.
Yeah, either cash balance or your cash flow is high. It really has a big effect in the effective cost of interest rate.
So you're taking like idle money, $100,000 in a checking account, you make $10,000 a month. You're leveraging that your balance sheet, your liquidity and your cash flow. Like Nate's saying, that's sweeping onto the balance.
Every
So if
night.
your balance is 300,000 and you make 10,000 a month, that sweeps. Boom! Now you're paying interest on 290.
190.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, 190.
I said 300,000.
Yeah, $110,000
Oh,
cash. Right, 190.
Including that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the net effect is your just interest cost is dramatically less. So
And you still have access to your liquidity. It's not like closed-end loan
You
where
can still pull it out.
it's
Yeah.
where it's locked up.
So it's dynamically done on a daily.
So you
it's
could pull,
automatic.
you can pull that out and be like, hey, man, there's this nice opportunity. You free up your equity for whatever, to lend it out or to capitalize on
Right.
an investment
And
property.
it's still a 30-year loan. So you still have access, you have access to the cash for 30 years. It's pretty cool one. So if anybody wants to see how that works, let us know. We have to get granular with you and show you how its specific numbers to you would work. Okay.
And so that's the product where you have the loan and the bank account all in one, and
Right.
you can use it to buy a house.
Yep.
It's not just a HELOC.
Correct.
After, you can use it to make the purchase.
Yep.
And then if your down payment's 25%, you've always got access to that
You
75%.
can wire, write a check, whatever you want, right from the account.
And so that product is good for people who have got lazy money, cash sitting around that they're not investing, or if there's folks who are holding on for a little while.
Yeah, well, even if you're buying right now, let's say you're buying an investment property. If you're buying an investment property at 7% and you have cash sitting around, you're effectively, whatever your tax bracket is, let's say you're in a 40% tax bracket, your cash that you invest, one, has market exposure, right, which is pretty risky right now. And two, whatever gains you have are capital gains. If you put the work in the account, you're effectively offsetting 7%, and you're also not putting yourself in a position where you're getting a capital gain. So it's very effective. Like a lot of times your net effect is close to 9% return. It's pretty impactful, especially for an investment property. And there's no adjustments for a fourplex. So it's the same rate for an investment property, 1 unit or a fourplex.
Mhm.
And what is it compared to like a normal type loan?
It's very similar in rate, except for it's adjustable. You can lock it for 3 years. Yeah, you can lock it for 3 years. But the way that it functions really changes the way the effective rate becomes more important than, well, let's just put it this way. The cost of interest is more important than the rate itself. And the functionality of this loan changes it to where the cost is what you're really seeing.
I see.
I mean, we'll see people with a payoff in 7 years. Effect with no change to payment.
Yeah.
So it's super cool. Okay.
Thanks.
guys.
Okay, guys,
Yeah,
well, before you
cheers.
sit down,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Dave's coming back up here. Let's do a summary. Let's all get in front of this little room here and screen. AVID Investors, what just happened? We got a lot of information out here. We have Dave Rusk from Idaho Central Credit Union. We have Andy from Summit. We have Nate from Summit. Scoot in a little closer, guys, a little closer. Okay, thank you for presenting to AVID Investors.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thanks to AVID Investors for being here. Some of the things I heard, starting in reverse order, is that inflation has been a big story and it is what dictates the interest rates. While none of us know the future, it is based on a 6-month look back, and everyone here seems to think that it's not going to be awesome for at least the next 6 months or so. What not awesome may mean it for a seller is a lot different than what it means for a buyer. Lord only, but to do so, you need to have access to money. To have access to money, you need a lender, and to and you need to make the numbers work. So the summit folks here have talked about different ways to access equity and cash and an ability to buy. Reminder, AVID investors, if nobody else is buying, buy.
Right?
So if everyone gets scared, don't be afraid to listen to Warren Buffett and be a contrarian. So the rate trends tend to last, Nate was saying, 6 to 24 months historically. So if we're on a new uptick in high interest, we don't know how long that will last, but that's what historically has happened. And while these rates can help you access your cash, and then down the road, if rates chill out, you can do a longer term refi. So this summit team has access to some very creative products that can help you access cash for rehabs. Dave Rusk at Idaho Central Credit Union has great rates on the more traditional products, your traditional purchases, your investor purchases. And what he is saying is the amount of arm loans, they're back.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You've seen a flip in
Yes.
more 30-year fixed to more arm rates. So people are starting to plan for shorter term financing solutions to get through a new round of purchasing that's going on now, or may not be. Some investors are sitting on cash, but it's a good time to have that cash and not be afraid to spend it, I think. Is
Yeah, I
a
agree.
general consensus. It's hard to time it perfectly, but that many people coming after you for HELOCs, because
Right.
you can do a free HELOC.
Yes, it's free, but like right now, they're taking advantage of where prices are right now. Where, 6 months down the road, we could be, seeing, prices continue to go down, then you have less access to funds.
So while your values are high, your access to HELOC cash is higher. If your assessed value is high, that's what Idaho Central is looking at. You don't even have to pay an appraisal. You've got free access to money based on your equity, and if you don't use it, you don't get charged for it.
Mhm.
So it's a great time to open a HELOC, even if rates are dumb, because you don't pay the rate unless you borrow the money. But if you borrow the money on a smart purchase, suddenly nothing's dumb. You were gonna say something.
Nothing, I was just laughing at you, it's good.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks, AVID investors. I hope that sums it up. Yeah, Nate?
No, just laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah, well, either way. So yeah, 10-year arms are out there. If you're afraid of the arm, you settle into it a little bit, and then you buy your rates a little bit less if you do that. But marry the property, date the rate.
I like that. That's awesome.
Thank you,
I've
AVID
never
investors.
heard that before. That's good.
Well, I don't know who I
Really?
just heard it from, but I wish I could attribute it. Thank you, AVID investors.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Nate.